in 6 years. Again, if you look at it from minimum wage to Social Security, Donald Trump clearly does not understand the needs of working people, with Social Security being rendered insolvent in 6 years. What that would mean for the seniors of America is catastrophic. And then lastly, on the issue of contraception, I'm very pleased that our administration today announced a rule that would essentially allow folks to get contraception over the counter. And as we know, my policy is about making sure that Americans have what they need in terms of their reproductive health. And Donald Trump, you just look at his plan his Project 2025, would actually restrict access to contraception, which would just contribute to the public health crisis he's already created. I'll take any questions.
I'm going to start with Erica Green of the New York Times.
Madam President, Vice President, sorry, I'm sorry. Could you please speak to your messaging today, particularly as you go through the suburbs? You're trying to reach swing voters. Among them are women, white women, who voted for Donald Trump in the last 2 elections. Can you talk about your messaging to them and what you're hoping will break through today?
So today I am spending the day with former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. We are traveling to 3 states to talk with all Americans about what is at stake in this election, but doing it through the lens of a very important point, that what is at stake in this election is so fundamental that it really does cross partisan lines. We are talking about whether you will have a president of the United States who takes seriously their duty and their oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And there is a clear distinction here, which is that I will and he will not, as evidenced by many statements he has made, including his intention to be a dictator on day one, his intention to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. And then you just look at what the people who know him best and worked with him in the Oval Office in the White House have said about him, which is he is unfit to serve and would be dangerous if he were president again. And he, even by the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has been called a fascist to his core, I am quoting. So what we are talking with folks about today is what I've been talking with folks about since I've been on the campaign trail these last 70-odd days, which is this is a choice for the American people. And it is a choice between whether we're going to chart a new way forward that turns the page on the division, the hate, the chaos of Donald Trump, but also, and maybe even more fundamentally, do we have a President of the United States who stands behind the seal of the President of the United States, taking seriously their oath and their duty to uphold the Constitution of the United States and abide by the rule of law? And so I'm out here talking with folks to remind them of what's at stake. And I'm very pleased and honored that so many people are showing up to these events to have this conversation, because I think they know, regardless of who they voted for in the last election and the party with which they're registered to vote, on some issues we just have to all be Americans and put party aside.
We're going to go to Colleen at the AP.
Hi, Madam Vice President, do you think that Republican voters, and specific women voters, will be more likely to vote for you because of the fall of Roe? And are the Republican votes key to winning the blue wall states?
So I look at what happened in the midterms and in special elections to guide my thinking about this issue. And what we saw is in so-called red states and so-called blue states, when the issue of the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body is on the ballot, the American people vote for freedom, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote. And I do believe it is such a fundamental issue, which is understanding you don't have to abandon your faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling women what to do with their body. So I do believe it is a compelling issue, especially when we consider the fact that for so many of us, our daughters are going to have fewer rights than their grandmother. And America's strength, one of the attributes of our progress has been the expansion of rights, not the restriction of rights. And that's what we're seeing happen, and it has happened because Donald Trump created this situation when he's hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention they would undo the protections of Roe versus Wade, and they did as he intended.
We have time for one more. Andrea at Reuters right here.
Hi. So Elon Musk is giving away $1 million a day to voters who sign a petition. Do you have concerns about that in the context of law, you know, the sort of legal framework around elections? And secondly, a Reuters investigation has shown something like 300 cases of political violence already in the run-up to the election. Can you just address what can be done and what the federal government can do to push back against that?
Well, on the first point, I think people are looking into that. On the second point,
When you say people, do you mean the U.S. government?
I mean, I hear that folks are looking into it just based on the stuff you all are reporting. On the second point, there should be no place in America where we are seeing political violence. And sadly, we have seen, if we just look back to January 6th, when that occurred in a way that was most shocking and brought on because, of course, of Donald Trump, who incited a mob, a violent mob, that attacked the United States Capitol, wherein over 140 uniformed law enforcement officers were injured and some were killed. And where Donald Trump has still yet to acknowledge the travesty of that day and the political violence that occurred that day. So I will say and repeat what I think most people understand. In America, in a democracy, we should have no room for, nor should we ever condone any form of political violence. In a democracy, people will debate, people will disagree, but not resort to violence. And everyone should speak out about that, including and especially anybody who's running for president of the United States.
Thank you,
All
Madam
right,
Vice
thank you all.
Just hold down. We're gonna hold for a second,
It happens. Okay, you're on. Hold on one second. Okay.